Hi, this is Nick, Lime Green Squid, and this is my response to questions for atheists by xArabianxBeastx. Number 1. Were you raised in a religious household? No. Though my parents celebrated Christmas and Easter, they chose to tell me the truth. That they were old fairy tale stories that weren't true, but that people used to believe in them, and some still do. Number 2. Are humans the highest intelligence in the universe? We have no way of knowing. It is very likely that a species evolved on another planet billions of light years away, but I'm not an astrophysicist. I'm not aware whether billions and light years are the right coupling of words, but the universe is huge, so it might be. Anyway, yeah, so it's possible that a species evolved on another planet a few centuries or millennia or longer before we evolved, and are thus that much more advanced than we are. But it's just as likely that we are possibly the earliest form of complexly intelligent beings. Until we meet another race from this universe, we have no way of verifying this. But the probability of that is a little bit pretty much impossible, because we're just too far away to physically get anywhere, even to the next star. Number 3. Why hasn't another Big Bang occurred? Because the universe hasn't compressed into a single point yet, if the expansion-contraction theory is correct. Presently, another Big Bang would be impossible because everything's already banged out of the first one, and it's less an explosion than the rapid expansion of everything in the universe from a single compressed point. Number 4. How do symbiotic relationships happen? I'm not an evolutionary biologist, so I can't give an in-depth answer, but basically over the billions of years of evolution, molecules linked cause chemical reactions. Movement and division and consumption were needed to keep these molecules alive, and some molecules desired the same things or could get something from one another to help survival. Somehow that stuck with living creatures, and some have mutated enough to even create their own foreign organisms within their own bodies at birth, such as the bacteria in our colon that helps us digest and retain water, I believe. I'm not exactly sure where the E. coli bacteria come from. We have those in our intestines too, so don't worry about it. 5. What made you expel your faith? If this problem was solved, would you regain it? Well, I never had faith in any gods in the first place to be expelled. The only way to solve this problem is if a god or a set of gods were to show him, herself, themselves to all people at the same time, at least once a year. I can't believe in something that shows no evidence for its existence past the mythical stories written by Bronze Age humans with Bronze Age understanding of the world. What made you expel your faith of Hercules? What made you expel your faith in Anubis? It's the exact same question. 6. What's the point of the tail? Again, I'm not a zoologist or an evolutionary biologist, but I've been told in school that it is used for balance in animals mainly. Eventually, at some point in the evolutionary path that led to our species, tails became useless, and the species at that point, for some reason, decided to mate more with those without tails than those with. 7. If you saw God in your dream, would you believe in his existence or find yourself vanched to the idea? He says a word, I don't know what it means or what word he's trying to say. It sounds like vanched. I don't know the definition of that word, but anyway, the answer, but if I saw a God in my dream, I'd realize it was a dream and ignore it like all the other non-evidence for gods. Now, if I saw a God while I was awake, and that I was certain that I wasn't on any drugs or in any sort of mentally exhausted state, then I'd have no choice but to believe. 8. Are we a perfect species? Can there be one? Evolution, and he mentioned something about evolution means change over time for the better. I don't believe we're perfect beings. We get backaches, we start wars over trivial opinions, religion for example. The majority of the population value delusion to reality. We get old and we die. Some of us choose to harm those we love. And there's tons more wrong with us. All of that needs to be fixed before we can even become close to being perfect. which can't really exist outside someone's expectations of perfection anyway, so that's a really loaded question. And yes, evolving does mean change over time for the better. We are all, well, possibly for the better. We are all constantly evolving, the bigger, more complicated species like ourselves taking the slowest, but we see microorganisms evolve almost daily. Whether we are evolving into a better species at this point is impossible to tell. Do you consider a newly evolved antibacterial resistant strain of bacteria better? 9. Do you believe any other species will evolve to our standards or even past them? If we died off, maybe. But other animals still survived, there'd still be a chance that after a few million or billion years, another species may arise to a similar mental and mechanical development as Homo sapiens. Nothing's definite, we just can't know, but it's a possibility. 10. How did sex evolve? Again, I'm not a biologist, so I only have a layperson's understanding, really. But if I, or you, more importantly, did the research yourself, you'd find articles about it written by people who do nothing but observe and record and test things to make sure that they are accurate before they are printed. AKA a scientist. That's all a scientist is. It's not some sort of religious guy that decides that this must be this way, that must be that way. All they do is observe and report. That's all they do. If you think anything beyond that, then you're stupid and ignorant. Now, my understanding of, well, let's see. Yeah, my understanding from my schooling anyway, is that at some point asexual reproduction in the earliest organisms were detrimental because there was possibly some sort of toxin or disease going around, and anyone born from that single strain of asexual reproduction has the exact same DNA structure, and any toxin will kill both of them because they don't have a resistance to it. But eventually, mutation occurred, someone has a resistance, but all the people were still dividing, organisms were still dividing by themselves, or possibly, again, I don't know how it came to happen. Eventually a mutation happened where beings were born separate of each other, but with one half of the reproductive system. And they had to come together to give birth. And that gave rise to different people or organisms with a different DNA structure, grouping with another organism of different DNA structure, making love, whatever, having sex, reproducing, a being that has both kinds. And if a toxin were to affect the mother parent, I'll say mother because who knows if gender was really decided back then yet. Not decided. We still use personification words. Anyway, the gender may not have been developed yet, but let's say the mother was intolerant to, I don't know, potassium, but the father was okay with potassium. The child would have a good chance of also being resistant to potassium because it has the possible both DNA, you know how it works. I'm not very good at words sometimes, but yeah. So the child would have a possible, or the children they'd make, half of them would probably have developed the resistance to that potassium, and the resistance would go on to their children. And basically, that's all evolution is. It's passing on traits from one generation to the next. And sometimes, after a long enough period of time, this world has been around for billions of years. After that, a long amount of time, there will be changes. Little bud on the end of a finger may grow into a hand, or at the end of an arm may grow into a hand. That type of thing. Not instantly. That's what Christians and religious people like to do, is say it's ridiculous to say that something will transform into another thing. It's impossible. Well, of course it's impossible. Over a long period of time, things will develop and get advanced and add on and accumulate different traits. And that's evolution, not magically transforming from one species to another. That's religion talking.